Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC. And today we are going to talk about how to set up drawings or views and sheets for concrete pour sequencing with a tool from the BIM Project Suite in Fab Sheets. Before I begin though, I want to encourage everyone that's attending the live presentation today to ask questions using the questions panel. I will be monitoring that as I present today, and will answer the questions in line with the presentation, or take time at the end, to answer anything that I missed and to do a quick recap on anything that came in during the presentation. If you are watching the recorded version on our YouTube channel, use the comment section down below. We certainly monitor those as well, and we'll make sure you get answers to your questions. So with that said, let's just jump right into it. All right. So when it comes to creating sequenced drawings inside of Revit, specifically surrounding the topic of the installation of something, Revit can do it, but it's going to take you a lot of time. There's not a very efficient way to accomplish something like that in Revit, unless you have some type of a plugin or maybe a dynamo routine or something along those lines, right? Because you got however many, dozens to hundreds of objects that need to be part of the sequences, and you've got the corresponding views to go along for that, and whether it's a view per element or 10 elements per view, that's still a lot of setup, and you got templates to make and parameters to add and schedules to build. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. Whether you're doing concrete or duct hangers or pipe hangers, or the installation of cabinetry or office furniture, like, it doesn't matter. It's all going to take a ton of time. Today, we are focusing on how Fab Sheets can assist with that process surrounding concrete. And that's where Fab Sheets comes in and will help expedite that process. Now, you could use a handful of other tools and piecemeal some things together, but Fab Sheets will help you do it all in one shot. So for today, we're going to talk about how to set it up. We're going to do a quick little brief intro to the user interface. If you want to learn more about the nuances and some of the ins and outs, you can check out our Introduction to Fab Sheets webinar on our YouTube channel. And a lot of it will just be similar to what we're talking about today there in that video as well, so you may not need to. But we're going to talk about how to set up sequences, what some of the prereqs are, and what will make life easier if you have already preset inside of Revit. And things like view templates and filters, and make sure your title blocks are loaded in. Is there a parameter you want to use for managing the sequence numbers, and then show you how to get it all set up, define the sequence, how to assign elements to increments and increments to sequences, and how to just build it all out. It doesn't take that much time. It may sound like it takes a little bit to set up, but it really doesn't. So, and I'm going to point out everything that I've done in my Revit file before we even run Fab Sheets. So, and I don't do PowerPoint. So let's just jump right into it. It's a lot easier just to show you everything inside of Revit. Okay. So here's a Revit file that I've got going on. And in this case, I've got this nice foundation plan where everything's nice and clean. It's easy to read, makes this process a little bit easier, at least for me. And I'm going to quickly pop into a 3D view just to with a pared down look of what we're working at here. So I've got my foundations, I've got some concrete columns and pad footings, I've got some piers floating around somewhere else, got some shorter foundation walls, taller ones, and I've got a foundation slab in here somewhere. I think that's the floor, but there's a slab in there. It's probably underneath it. And for the setup, and I'll hash on this a little bit, but really the big things you want to focus on when it comes to setting it up is just your view templates, and making sure that you know how you want your views to look at the end of the day, because you can specify that as part of the process. That's really the big thing. Otherwise, the app will kind of guide you through everything that you need to do, and you can come back and forth, and you won't lose out on any things. And you'll see me doing that quite a bit, to be honest. So I'm going to fire up Fab Sheets right now and just jump right into it, because again, there's not a whole lot of setup that I did other than cleaning up stuff I didn't want in this demo set. But so this is the interface. Fab Sheets is part of the BIM Project Suite, as I mentioned earlier. It's the very first darker shaded green button up here on the left. And this is what it looks like. So there's three pieces to the function of Fab Sheets. There's the settings tab, and this is where you kind of set up the initial stages of the process, where you specify what parameter you want to use to log the sequence number that gets assigned to objects and to views. There's the formatting and how the sequence and increment get logged, or you can switch it to be increment then sequence, depending on how you want it to read. And then really down here, it's just specifying what templates do you want to use for certain things. So this tool will help you create all of the views, right? Plan views, sections, elevations, schedules, and a sheet to lay things out on. So which view templates do you want to use for all of this? Now, because this can work with more than a category at a time, you may want to make sure that your templates are generalized to an extent. Now, you can certainly run through this process multiple times if you want to do one specific to concrete beams, and that's a unique template for the views and takeoffs. You could then do another set specific to your structural foundations with its own explicit templates. I've got mine generalized so that those elements will show up in all these templates to simplify that process a little bit, but you don't have to. So there is that. And because we have the opportunity to specify scale here, none of my templates have scale enforced in the template. You can, and it will hold the template because the template's the template, but at least that way I won't be sitting here trying to define what my scale of the view should be and then be confused when it's not that scale because my template managed it. So that's just how I've set it up. The big piece on this page, once I've set up everything, is just which parameter do I want to use. You can use your own parameter for this process. So if you've created your own shared parameter for tracking and reporting on the sequenced information, the sequence number, you can use that. If you don't have one, you can use the tool to create one for you, and it'll give you a name. It's basically it's just a project parameter at this point. And you can call it sequence, you can call it sequence number, you can throw corporate initials in there, you can call it whatever you want. And it's just a project parameter that gets added to your project with some categories already applied by default. So before I take any more steps moving forward, I'm going to close this out, and we're going to go check that out real quick, just to make sure everything that we want to talk about today is included in that parameter. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we're going to go review the default setup for the parameter itself. So if I go open up my project parameters here, and we're going to scroll down and check out the sequence number CTC, which is what I called it. If I edit this, you'll see that it's technically a shared parameter. So if you wanted to, you could export this out and build a tag family that references this parameter, so that you could call it out in plans if it helped with that effort. But at the very least, it's here. It can be scheduled. Theoretically, could be tagged if you wanted to. It's an instance property. It's a text parameter, and that way it can be text and numerical properties all at the same time, depending on how you want it to function. Now, as far as what's included out of the box, if I hide the unchecked stuff, this is what's included by default, right? Columns, floors, ramps, roofs, stairs, structural columns and framing, and then walls, right? But that's not the end game here. We can select any Revit category at this point. So if, in my case, I need to go grab my structural foundations category, because that was not included by default, which is fine. So I can grab that. If I wanted to include, if I wanted to do this for fabric reinforcement installation, I can do that, or structural or rebar placement, or any of that stuff. If that was part of the process, go ahead and check those categories at this time. And it will just allow those objects to be selected and included as part of the sequence. If you don't, visually, they could still be present and appear as long as your template's allowed for that. But if you wanted to physically select where certain things, or what certain objects are a part of, you got to make sure you check the box. This also does work with parts, construction parts. So if you, like on a floor, for example, or a foundation slab, if you wanted to control how that, the visibility of that for sequenced purposes, you could break it up into parts and use the grid to do the automatic references or something like that, and it will split it that way for you, and we can sequence it based off that. So I'm going to include parts in this case just to do a couple of those. And I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. So I'm going to click OK, and that just updates it for the project. We're all good to go. And again, if this is something you wanted to use on multiple projects, just make sure that parameter lives in all those other projects, and you can use transfer project standards, or if you exported it out and loaded it into your parameter file, you can use shared parameter manager to batch load things into projects. There's a bunch of different things you can do with that to get it from one to the next. Transfer project standards is the perfect default if everything is supposed to be together. So back to Fab Sheets. Okay, now a couple of different things that we need to continue as far as the setup goes, right? So we talked about just some basic Revit setup. Again, most of it's just view templates on the Revit side of things, but then adding the one parameter that we wanted to use. There is then the sequence management tab. This is step 2 of the setup. This is where we define the naming conventions that we're going to use for the individual sequences and what we're going to go ahead and lay out or track with this, and then the individual increments that will be part of those sequences. So for example, if I wanted to focus on footings first, I would add a sequence and I will call it footings. And if I wanted to do a number of these, I can do them all right now. I can add one for columns. I can add one for slabs, not slabbles, slabs. If I had beams down here, I can do that. Especially if everything's all cast in place, makes it real simple. Even if it's precast, right? I could do beams, right? It really just depends on how you want to label things. And if you've got multiples categories of something, maybe you do have beams here, maybe you wanted to call up precast beams, right? Well, it's just a matter of how you want to type it out, and just hit enter for each new line. I don't think I have any concrete beams down here at the moment. So I'm just going to do these 3 and hit OK. Wait, hold on. I'm going to do walls. We got walls. Okay. So these are the parent sequences, right? So this is the top level group of the information that we're creating at this point. Okay. If we want at this time, we can stop and we can create some selectable style views for the elements, or we can just start adding increments. I typically like doing it all kind of in one shot because you have that opportunity to do so. but you could theoretically uncheck increment views, hit this create update selection view, and what it's going to do is generate a plan view and likely a 3D view. Potentially, it really just depends on how you set it up. For each one of these categories. Okay. Now, and that just gives you an opportunity to have an isolated view of this portion of your model so that you can do these selections and assign them to the right increments and do these things. And it's just easier to navigate and easier to see. So there are going to be a lot of views getting created at this point. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and grab one of my groups here, columns, one of my sequences, and hit add increment. And at this point, you define the numbering scheme that you want to use to keep track of the individual increments, right? Whether it's 2-digit, 3-digit, 1-digit, 5-digit, doesn't matter, or numbers and letters, and it's really entirely up to you how you want to create the numerical or alphanumerical incremental process here. It could be C.001. You can really label this however you'd like. So I'm just going to do 4 for this one. I'm going to grab my footings here. I'm going to do the same thing. 001, 02, 03, 04. And just move on down the list. I suppose I could just copy paste this. Can I? Yes. Just grab that and down to walls. Do the same thing. There we go. That's a little quicker. Okay. So now I've got the sequence here, and I've got 4 increments in each sequence down below. Okay. And this is going to help me to break up my model into these kind of 4 categories, or 4, sequences and individual increments. Now, before I create any views, I do have this opportunity here to assign colors. Now, I could technically do this after the fact, but it's a lot easier and quicker if you do it up front. So if I want to pick a color scheme, I can. Before I get into that, though, I'm going to hit this one because it falls right in line. Question came in to, will it automatically add more increments when it's run? So I stopped at 4. Will it automatically add 05 and 06 and 07? No, it won't. I have to do that. The increment setup and creation is a manual setup process. Okay, so now to assign the color schemes, there's a couple of different ways to go about doing it. You can either grab a sequence and focus on just assigning maybe like random colors, for example. You can grab everything all in one shot and do it. It kind of just depends on what do you care what the colors are. And the color, I should explain, is assigned to the objects at the increment level. So when I take an object and I say you're part of columns increment 1, and the color applied to that was orange, now my footings will appear orange in my selection views. Okay, and that's just so you know visually this color goes with here, and we can have it build out a legend to marry the two together. So if I were to grab columns and hit assign random, it's going to assign a random color to all 4 of the increments. I could also come down to footings, for example, and hit assign color. And that's a manual assignment, right? Do I want green? Because I had footings selected, everything's green, regardless of what increment it's on. If I wanted to override these individually, I'd have to select the increments individually to change the colors. But you can certainly do that. So if there was a color scheme that was, office standard, for example, that you wanted to use for this, you most certainly can. right? And you can open it as fly out, panel up, and define your custom colors, whether you know the RGB or the hue setlum, or you just wanted more options to choose from. And you can add, if you want to keep using it, add it to your custom colors bar here and run with it, right? So it's really up to you how you do this. Is it random or is it explicit? And maybe it's a little of both, right? Maybe you start by assigning random colors but you don't like bright yellow. So you can select it and change that color assignment, right? And maybe sometimes the rando selection works out just fine. It really just depends on what your preferences are, right? All right, now from here, and you can remove it, you can always edit things and change the sequence names or increment names. It really just depends on what you want to do and what you have selected when you click at it. But you can change the sequencing and how things are being labeled at this stage with that edit button. If you decided that you had too many increments created or a sequence created that you're not going to do, you just select it and hit remove. It'll get rid of it from your file. All right, now we get the glorious task of us creating views. So at this point, you can effectively, I'll just minimize these things to make it go a little quicker. Grab all of my sequences, and at this point, I've got it set to create both my sequence and increment views. So I can hit create. And these are selection views, right? This is intended to give you some opportunities to change things up, associate some scope boxes, narrow things down, and allow you to kind of have more opportunity for managing how the breakdown of these sequences and increments and the elements within are going to function. That's what these are for. Do you have to use all of these? No, you don't, right? Maybe you just want sequence views. Just uncheck increments and leave sequences on and you're good to go, right? It's really kind of up to you how you want to do that. So right now, this gave me sequence selection 3D view, and it shows that's the entire thing and the rest of the building. But just to show you what this looks like, I've got it, and it goes crazy with it. It does it based off the levels. It does it based off the increments and the sequences here. So it makes a lot of views here if you do both. Had I only done sequence views, then I would have had 1, 2, 3, 4, and then by level. And that's just, again, to give you the flexibility to customize this as much as you need to, which is fine. If you don't need them when you're done, just delete them, because we don't have to do this process again unless we start adding stuff. So again, if you don't need any of this, just delete it and keep the one, or don't make any of it and just set it up manually. That's okay too. So at this point, we have the opportunity now to set up the assignments. How do we want to, what objects are going where? So I'm going to switch to the one of my other 3D views here real quick. And I am going to change and actually I could have just done this from my base 3D view here too. It doesn't matter where you do this. So what I can do here, let's say for the columns, I'm going to grab this one and this one, and we'll just call that part of columns 001, assigned to elements. Oh, I should have clicked the button first. So my apologies. I'm going to start that over. So I did it backwards. So if I want to assign this increment to any objects out here, you select the increment, you hit assign to elements, and then select the objects that you want to be a part of that. And up here in the options bar, go ahead and click finish. And they will be associated. Now, if I switched over to this selection views 3D view here, those have changed color. My default 3D view did not, because it didn't have the filters associated to it, which is perfectly fine. Like I said, it doesn't matter where you do the associations, but the colors are there to help you understand which ones you've already done, so that you're not inadvertently assigning things to, or trying to add things to multiple increments. Right now, there's that visual indicator, and that's really all that's for, is to just make things easier on you. So I'm just going to go real quick, do an orient to my foundation plan here, so I can see things a little bit easier and not have to deal with the rest of the building in the model. Okay, there we have it. Now I can go to increment 2 for columns, hit assign, and start grabbing maybe this one and this one and this one and that one. We'll hit finish, and we'll go to number 3 and do the same thing. So right now I'm just grabbing a bunch of stuff, and hit finish. Last but not least, we'll do these 2 outside ones over here, just so they don't feel left out. Good. Okay. So now I've got 4 increments worth of stuff set up for columns. Footings, same thing, right? Select the assignment or the increment and grab what you need to include. So in this case, I'm going to do these, and we'll grab some of these foundations here, just so that we have a little bit more to work with. We'll do that, and then I'll hit finish. And that, again, we're just going through the same thing. And I'm in the columns one, so now I should switch to the footings one if I want to see the footing colors, right? That's kind of how everything was set up. Now, based on what has been done here, just to go back and show you this, there are view templates being made or being used for this, right? So I associated this guy, and well, right now we're just doing a bunch of color overrides, it looks like, but actually, I'm in the wrong spot. I wonder if it even uses these anymore. No, I'm forgetting. Nope, it's not, and that's okay. So each view here, if I just, is getting its own set of color overrides. So theoretically, what you could do is, if you knew, these are ultimately all going to get view filters and templates applied. We could merge these 2 together at the end of the day and utilize that in one view, so that you're not having to jump to different places. But again, the reason why it's creating these the way it's creating them is just to make life easier on you to set it up. I'm just going to change my orientation again, just to, again, crop out the fluff that we're not talking about. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to just do a couple more real quick. I'm not going to do all of them. And we'll hit assign. We'll grab this and this and this and this. And well, let's just do this. Nope, wrong one. That one. There we go. A little easier. And grab those, that, and then maybe I'll grab a couple of these. And finish. Number 3, I'll grab these. Finish. And for number 4, same thing, right? So you get the idea. We're just grabbing stuff. I could do a window selection. The downside to that is it grabs a bunch of stuff and I'll have to go through the filter and, you know, it's, if you only focusing on footings, it's best just to go through and grab the footings. If it helps you isolate just the footings on the sheet or on the view so that you're not trying to do too much. Hit finish. All right, so there's those 4. And then I can just keep going and do the same thing. We'll jump to slabs and do the slabs. So the one thing I wanted to point out with the slabs, which is why I set this up the way I set it up, is we have the ability to do parts, right? And oftentimes the slabs are broken up into parts. So you're going to have, it's just not going to be one big solid spot, right? At least as far as the installation goes, right? So in Revit, we're modeling it as one big chunk, typically. And if you're lucky, this gets broke out maybe at, major building points. But oftentimes it's just one big hunk of slab. In this case, that may not fly. So I'm just going to pop into my visibility graphics real quick and turn parts on. I've already done it. Okay, I've broke my floor up into parts already, and I had some sloping things going on here and some extra grids, and I actually just used, when I did the divide parts, I just picked grids as my intersecting references here. That's how I set it up. You don't have to do that. You can do it, by reference planes or, sketch in your own reference points. So, but I kept it simple, did grids, and then, the thought is that at the grid line, we have our expansion joints and yada, yada. But here now, because I also made sure to go to the project parameter and add parts as a category, right? So now for my slab, I can hit assign to elements and grab that part and maybe this one and this one, and then hit finish, right? And now those are parts, okay? And then I can go ahead and do the same thing on down the line. So to assign, and we'll do this one, this one, this one, finish 3, and I'm just gonna do a couple more. Just, now at this point, it's just repetitive. So, and last but not least, number 4, and we'll just grab these 3. Okay. All right. And then finally with the walls, you guys, I think, are grasping the concept at this point. If your walls are drawn up the way that they're gonna go, just pick the ones you want to use and have at it. I'm not gonna take a whole lot of time on this one, so we'll just grab the wall, and I'm just gonna add a couple. Because at this point, we're gonna start laying out the rest of the stuff. So I'm just gonna grab one of these, and bada bing, bing, bing. Oh, no, not the floor. Sure. Good enough. And finish. Okay. All right. Now, so we've got that taken care of. Now, the last thing on here that I want to point out, just because sometimes it helps paint the picture a little bit and guide people as to what's been done in the setup, is we can create legends. Okay, we can create a color legend based on the stuff that's being used in the project, and you do this per sequence, and we can have it do that for us automatically. And legend view for each sequence, and do we want blank entries that where we haven't set an increment up yet? So you can do it all in one shot or have a bunch of individual ones. So in this case, this one's showing me the walls because that's where I was at, but here we go. I guess that pen weight's pretty bad, so I'll have to change that later. But it's just a nice little legend. Makes it simple. You could put that on the sheets at the end of the day with everything. And, it's just a drafting view. So wherever your stock drafting views end up is where these are going to go. Here's mine. In this case, I'm going to minimize a couple of these just to keep things cleaned up a bit here. Okay, so there they are. Just lays everything out the way you set it up. Now, back to Fab Sheets. The final, I think I minimized that. I did. All right. Last step. Setting up the actual creation of the views in the sheet. Some additional filters. Now, two things that I need to point out that are could be very important that before we even create these. The first one is scope box. Have to have scope box, right? The plans, the elevations, the sections, they need to know what the boundaries are. And when we adjust the scope boxes, the view sizes will update according to those scope boxes, right? We need these things. So there's got to be at least one in the project for the product to use. And in this case, I think I've got a couple down here. So the app is going to use one of these two scope boxes. Or I can say hit create and let it make its own, right? Based off this sequence here or this. So what I'm going to do actually is just take these two and delete them and then hit create scope box. Oh, see, it didn't find it. So that's okay. So let's do this. If I delete one of these and hit create scope box, the app is going to use that shape and size of scope box to put together the first one in the list. In this case, it was columns 01. That was the first thing I had. That was what I had selected at the time. And now I can use this because it now has a scope box to build out the different types of plans that I want to use. So if you're ready to go ahead and do all of these in one shot, you would effectively select all of these and hit create scope box. And then we're going to get scope boxes of this shape and size for all of these, right? So here's a tip that I want to add to this. Now, we could, like I said, could do this for everything all in one shot, right? But we're going to have some editing to do after the fact. You can break it out and do them in different passes, okay? And that'll give you a little bit of extra control potentially on the sizing of the scope boxes so that, columns will look great in this case because that's how I sized up this scope box, but that's not going to work very well for my walls or my footings because of how I've put things together. So running them, you can do the whole project in one shot for view creation and setup, but it might make more sense to dial it in a little bit more, do smaller sections at a time. As far as amount of editing to do after the fact. So if I say, I'm just going to run with it, I'll have to do some editing and that's okay, but I'm just going to grab everything and let it cook. Now, and actually before I let it cook, there's one other thing I want to point out that we didn't talk about yet, and it's a graphical piece. Back on the settings tab, we have the sequence graphics overrides. When the views are created, we have the opportunity here to specify some overrides to the objects visible in the views that we're about to make. For the preceding increment, the current increment, and the following increment, right? So for the current increment, we kind of want that to stand out, right? So do we want to use what's being used in the model, or do we want to override that stuff with some hatch patterns, surface and cut patterns, and enhanced cut and projection lines? We can do that right now. Then for the previous increments that may show, how do we want those to show up? Do we want them to show up? And if we do, how do we want them to appear? Do we want them to appear as dashed lines, as super thin, as dashed dots, or a bunch of dots, or various other pieces here? It's you get to choose, assuming you want those to be visible. Same thing with the next increment or the following increments. How do you want those to appear? Right. Same thing. Do we want them to be dashed lines, or do we want a different style for that? So I've chosen to keep mine turned off in this case, and have the previous increments set to dashed lines. But you have the ability to customize that. So you want to do that first. Then we can jump over to the view creation side, grab everything else, hit create scope box. I'm going to get additional scope boxes for the sequences and increments that I've made all over the place based on elements that I've done or things that I've already selected. And now we can create the views for them. So here's where you decide what views you want to make. Do you want plan views and structural plan views, or one or the other? Do you want elevation views? If so, which ones do you want and how many? Same thing with sections. Do you want east, west, or east, west, north, south, and how many? You get to choose that at this point, and that's the number that you choose for these, if you're making them, is per increment. So we could potentially be creating, is that 6, 7, 8, 6 and 1, 2, 3, 16, 6 times 16, whatever that is. A lot of views. 84, right? No, 96. I don't know. Math is hard sometimes. But that's a lot of views, right? And if you're not going to use all 6 of those, do you really need to have that many? So you can go ahead and decide, do I need sections and elevations in this case? Or do I even need elevations? Maybe I just need sections. It's up to you, obviously. And but I'm going to go ahead and just leave them checked just so you see what's going to go down. What types of 3D views do you want? Do you want a sequenced ISO 3D view in this run, or just individual increments? Since I've already kind of got the 3D views over here for the selection views, I'm not going to go ahead and create another sequence 3D view. So I'm just going to use the incremental ones. I'm going to do a material schedule. I have another schedule that we could run on top of that or not. Don't know if we need both, but I'm going to run both just so you see it. And we're going to have it build out a sheet for us at the same time. You don't have to build the sheet, but you can. If you do it this way and create the sheet, the tool is going to add the views to the sheets for you. Yeah, and at this point, you just hit go. So I'm going to hit create/update. Now, once this is all said and done, if something changes, like maybe you added more increments and associated elements to those increments, we can create an update. We can create more views without ruining anything, right? You can always add to the process. If you change a setting or change the graphic of something and you want it to apply everywhere, hit update. It'll make that change and update everywhere. So we do have the ability to maintain some of this stuff. Oops, I only had the one thing selected. Select all, update, or create. Sorry. So I suppose I could have just hit the select all button down here at the same time, but it's okay. Got to make sure we pick everything. So while this is cooking, there was a question that had come in earlier, and I want to make sure I hit it. Using assemblies, would this help make the sheet show the assembly changes? If using assemblies for this, you got to make sure that the categories of the elements in question contained within the assembly are included as part of this. And then once this is done, we'll check to make sure that assemblies is a checkbox that you can use. So I think that it would work. In fact, if I remember correctly, I've done this before. I'm pretty sure it does work, but we'll double check. once this is all said and done. Now, once this is done and I get all my views, all of them are going to be associated to these scope boxes. So there's going to be some flexing around that I'm going to have to do in this case. So because lengths of objects are going to be different in some cases than in other cases. The heights may vary a titch. Depths are certainly going to be different, right? Like I didn't exactly select a consistent object for each individual increment, right? In some cases I had 2 columns, some cases I had 4 columns, right? So there's going to be some editing to go on here. So at this point, I'm going to close the app, and just to show you how this will play out, I'm going to go grab columns. So I'm going to go find my fabrication setup here. It's up here because that's the template I used, and that's how the template's organizing things, the view template. So if I go ahead and grab columns 01, this is what it's doing. So I'm clearly my view template is doing something that I didn't set up properly, like the view range. So if I fix this do it? No, I think I forgot to. Oh, that should be there. So I'm gonna go find out why. Where's my 3D? I don't like this new tabbed thing, Revit, come on. So it should be these two. Oh, you know what I bet it did? Yep, it put it right in the middle. That's it. So one of the things that you get to do when you're setting this up is every single one of these scope boxes is named. So you can select the scope box, look at the name, and it's providing the name of the increment that was associated, that it was assigned to during the process. And by default, everything is pinned so that it doesn't accidentally get drug around in weirdness places. So I can do my stretching now at this point, right? And that's what I needed to do here. So if I switch back to, where did it go? Way down. I'm going to close some of these views down here in a sec, but there we go. Now we've got what I expected to get in the first place. This scope box is no longer needed, so I'm actually just going to delete it from this for now. And here we go. Now I see the 2 columns that were initially part of that set. And this is where, maybe paying more attention to the size of the scope box prior to processing it all, so that you get one that's going to work a little bit better right out of the gate. Because right now, again, I'm going to get a whole lot of nothing because I didn't exactly pay attention to how I set it up. So I'm just going to close those out, switch back to my 3D view. Pretty sure this one is right here in the middle, if I remember correctly. This one, right? Yeah. So now I can stretch this out to fit around those. I think that's pretty close. No. Oh, that's right. The template got applied as is. So I made a mistake in how my templates were set up for the view ranges. So that's going to be part of this, and then everything else doing all the good stuff. So that's fine. I'm not going to fret too much about it. So, but the whole point of this, so I'm going to stick with column 1 here at this point, and then, but I get the 3D view here, right? How many of these did I beef up? Nope, that's a Revit link. Nope, well, I suppose I don't necessarily know what work set everything was on. I suppose I should have paid attention to that a little bit better. So let's do this real quick. Yeah, okay, that's open. Let me just do this. Work set, turn that back on. I bet that's half my problem. Yep, it was. Now I'm actually seeing a few things. That's a step in the right direction. So, at any rate, what I wanted to show you here, and I wonder if they're using these. And we go back to this, that's all happy. No. Why? Okay, I'm not going to waste a ton of time trying to figure out why my visibility is all foobarred. But what I want to point out is this. So we got schedules now. We got takeoff schedules. Okay. I've got, tells me the family's being used, material names in place, and the volume in this case, and what the sequence number is, right? And I've got an individual schedule built for that at the moment. And we've got this fabrication takeoff schedule that was used as the base template, which is currently filtering out a ton of stuff. And that's okay, because it's expecting sequence number equals something. If I just say the parameter exists, and family type, well, we'll do that. And yeah, I mean, it really depends on how you want this to set up. And apparently I didn't pay enough attention to how I had this set up. But I'm pretty sure if I do it this way, there we go. There we go. We're getting somewhere. But you just start breaking things out. And come down. So we have it for everything. And then I've got sheets. The sheets also involve a little bit of work, but for each increment that was created, you're going to have the information available. And so I had it make two schedules for me. I had to do a takeoff schedule and an individual column schedule. I also got a bunch of, I got my sections, which again would need to be adjusted based off the scope boxes, right? My scope boxes are clearly too tall for this, so I'm getting way more information than I needed. I did a bunch of elevations here for that, and I've got the plan view. So what we can do based off some of this information here is set it up to do, well, you know, it's all on the sheet. You have to still position it because the Fab Sheets doesn't know how to lay things out. So what I will suggest is this: lay one out, one time, right? You put you get your plan or plans in place, get your elevation or elevations in place, do the sections the same way, put your schedules where you want them, and make sure that you think that they're in a safe enough place so that if the scale of the objects or the views change, that we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot by how we've positioned it. Then what you do is you can use an app like, if I just put this here, you can use an app like Sheet Assistant to save this layout as its own kind of a layout configuration to then be applied to all of the other sheets. And if all of the other sheets are set up in the same fashion with a plan, an elevation, two sections, and two schedules, then they will all get rearranged to be in the same position as you see here. And that's what Sheet Assistant is really, really good at, is taking a layout that you approve of, that is your quote unquote office standard and or documentation standard, and applying it to other like similar sheets throughout the project. So Fab Sheets is great at setting things up and creating the views for you. Sheet Assistant is great at getting things consistently laid out across the board. So if you want to know more about Sheet Assistant, go check out the video on our YouTube channel for Sheet Assistant. you can access the video from the app itself. Click the app, there's a videos button at the top. Same with Fab Sheets. Now, there's a videos button up there too if you want to see some of the other stuff. Yeah, but that's effectively it. And then just to recap what the end results are going to be, you're going to get, if you wanted to, you're going to get all of these different types of views because that's what I told it to do, right? And again, the better off the template, the better the template that you choose, the more consistent and representative the results you're going to get are going to be. So the templates that you choose here directly get associated here and get replicated amongst these views over here. So if I were to go to my template manager real quick and just show you this. We got view templates now for all the different views because I told it to do that, right? I told it to duplicate and apply filters. I didn't have to. I did that myself, and that's a little checkbox that was down here, duplicate and apply filters to templates. Like I said to do that. But here we go. And now we've got everything in line for columns, both for plan, elevation, and section. I got my footings, got my slabs, and my parts really, and I got my walls. They're all here. And then on top of that, each has its set of filters. Here they are. And I still have stuff from a previous set that I did. I forgot to delete all my filters out, but here's the 4 columns ones that I had, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the ones I just made. And it tells you only show me stuff that have that number applied or that increment. So it's clear and it's explicit. At this point, we can, and they're all being applied to the individual views themselves so that we can control what's visible and what's not visible, which also then means we could theoretically take a 3D concrete view, for example, and since they're filters in my project, I can customize this now and add all those filters to this view and enable them, change colors, change things, and turn everything else off effectively. I could do that on my own. I'm not going to, but you could. You now that we have the elements and the filters and the increments set up, you can really tweak the views and customize them to be exactly what you need it to be, and then some. So, let's see, anything else that I wanted to point out? Nope, that about covers it. So, again, there's a bunch of setup to do, and sorry, my phone was ringing for a second. I apologize for that. Just need to make sure that you specify a parameter to use for your sequencing, good view templates, organize your sequences and your increments in a way that makes sense. Use colors if it helps, don't have to. And, batch create all the views as you need to, whether it's by sequence or all at once, and, pick the ones you want to use. And that's about it. So that just about covers it. I hope you see how easy it is to set some of this stuff up and to create the views. Again, view templates are huge in this workflow. Yeah, if there's at any point there's questions down the road, if you get curious and you try this out, just reach out. You can hit us up at info@ctcsoftware.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the workflow if you run into any stumbling blocks. And I appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you guys at the next webinar. Thank you all, and have a great day. And just a quick recap on a couple of the questions that came in, if anyone is interested. I have, so the assemblies thing. I was going to show that and didn't get around to it and forgot to come back to it. But basically, when you add the parameter and you go check the setup, assemblies is right here. So if you're using assemblies to do like precast tilt panels, for example, and you want to manage the installation of that, you can use assemblies. And just make sure that the categories of objects within those assemblies, you also include that too. Doesn't necessarily mean you're individually incrementing those out, but just make sure that they're included. And that just helps for the templates and visibility setups. So, but yes, it'll work. Then will it automatically create stuff or additional increments if you needed more than what was there? No, it won't. That's a manual setup. You have to do that yourself. So yeah. And if there's any other questions, fire away. If not, that's okay too. Just reach out if you come across any in the future. Again, info@ctcsoftware.com. All right, well, since nothing's coming in, that's okay.